it.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to oblige the member. I do recall the trip we made to the Duke of Marlborough Hotel in Russell to meet a number of wealthy expatriates who had come to this country as their bolt hole and who were enjoying the benefits of their earnings and investments at that stage. And the FDR regime, which effectively said we would tax them on a portion of the gain, provided they were outside Australia, because the member will recall 70% of New Zealand offshore investment at that point was into Australia. So the people who were going to be caught by this were those outside the Australian regime. Most of these people, of course, were Americans and Canadians and Europeans, not used to paying tax, and even more incensed that this was a government policy which was broadly supported by all sides of the House, which might require them to pay some. And my overriding recollection of that meeting, and I'm sure the member recalls it, was that there was one group of people on the front who were being very nice and reasonable and trying to go through all of the arguments but without actually betraying their real intent. And right at the end of the meeting, there was this, I think she was a Canadian woman, got up and said, "I'm sick of what I'm hearing. I'm hearing all these people talking about fairness and equity and paying their taxes. We're wealthy people. We shouldn't have to put up with that nonsense." And the consensus that had been built during the meeting about trying to work our way through was destroyed by the selfishness of this particular individual. No, it wasn't. Having said that, we did develop a regime that was fair and reasonable. What I've been trying to say in earlier parts of the discussion on this bill was that this is part of an overall package of reforming our international tax rules. The member makes reference to Mr Gibbs, and it was the Briley Guinness Peak Group, GPG, over the cotton manufacturers whose name I temporarily forget. And the member will recall we gave them a 5-year exemption, that if they could prove that within that 5 years the GPG group, or the name Coates, the cotton people, were substantially located within New Zealand, then they would be exempt from the regime. I should tell the member that what happened, because the 5-year anniversary was last year, that Mr Gibbs or his successors quietly have let that one go. So that the argument that they were a substantially New Zealand company and that therefore they had to be exempted, when we said you've got 5 years to make the transition, at the end of the 5 years they came back and said no, we're quite happy with things as they stand. So that was the outcome on that story. Mr Chairman, I just want to make a comment about the SOP that's been moved by Mr Parker. And if I read it correctly, what he's seeking to do is hold the rate of AIL at 2%. Yes, so in effect what Clause 142 does is give us the mechanism to strike it at 0. He's simply saying remove that, hold it at 2%. Well, Mr Chairman, that is contrary to the intent of the bill. The government will not be supporting that. And I would suggest to Mr Parker that what he's proposed is a rather elaborate mechanism. If he's opposed to going from 2% to 0, he should vote against that part.
Honourable David Parker.
Mr Chairman, we will